Family is Providence. Thanks for tuning in. The news recently broke of a young college student by the name of Caleb Wilson who attended Southern University, who was recently pledging to Omega Psi Phi fraternity. And while the ritual was taking place, he was standing in line and eventually collapsed. And people are putting two and two together that this was a hazing ritual, and this young man, Caleb Wilson, lost his life as he was trying to pledge this fraternity. And I think that this, again, highlights a lot of the things that go on behind closed doors, sort of unofficially. I mean, all of these fraternities, sororities, they have anti-hazing policies, but we really know what goes on behind closed doors. The universities will say that this was an off-campus incident, that it had nothing to do with them, but the universities know what's happening. Everybody knows what's happening when it comes to these fraternities and sororities. Almost all of them practice hazing in some way, shape, or form, and we see incidents like this take place. Now, Omega Psi Phi, the fraternity that Caleb Wilson was trying to pledge, had another incident happen in 2019 at Old Dominion University, where a 2021 lawsuit was filed by one of the people who suffered hazing. And he talked about how he was paddled over 70 times a week, forced to consume hot sauce and engage in all other types of degrading activities. This type of thing happens all the time, basically. Now, I went to Howard University, which is basically the mecca and the starting point for many of these fraternities and sororities, especially for the Divine Nine, African-American fraternities and sororities. And I remember being on campus and being completely inundated with fraternity and sorority culture. I mean, if you've never been to college, you need to understand that fraternities and sororities basically run the social life of these universities, right? They get all of the special treatment. They run the party scene. You go to these fraternities and sororities, you see them stepping, you see them strolling, and the power and the culture that they command on these universities is very attractive. You know, I myself wanted to pledge. Now, I had become a Christian during that time, and, you know, I had found out some things about the rituals and things like that I felt like didn't line up with my Christian faith. And so I kind of backed away from it. But fraternity and sorority culture was very alluring to me. It was a beautiful scene, quite frankly. And in many respects, it does help people in many ways. Fraternities do many good things. So I'm not going to sit here and act like they're irrelevant or they're not helpful or they can't provide a community for people who very much do need a brotherhood or a sisterhood. But at the same time, I think there's a tremendous problem with these rituals and the way in which people get treated. I mean, when you're participating in university culture, you hear about all of the connections that people make with these fraternities. You see the special treatment, and you think that these sororities and these fraternities can really help you get to a place in your life, whether it's career aspirations or social aspirations, whatever it is you have. These fraternities and sororities can get you there. And to be honest with you, they can help. You can't deny that. But I think that sororities and fraternities have also proven to not necessarily be necessary, to be honest with you. I first realized that sororities and fraternities weren't necessary when Barack Obama got elected in 2008. Because in my mind, a black man made it to the highest office in the land, not just in the land, but in the world. He became the most powerful person in the world. And to my knowledge, Barack Obama is not a part of any fraternity or sorority, none of the Divine Nine sororities and fraternities. And so for me, it became clear that, yeah, while these fraternities and sororities can be helpful, they're not necessary. You get on your grind, you work hard, you're in America, you can make it wherever you want to make it. You just have the right connections, you meet the right people, you work hard, you network in your own way, you can get to where you need to get. And there are plenty of people in these fraternities and sororities that don't end up being very successful either. So it's not like it's a guarantee that if you enter into one of these fraternities and sororities, you're going to just be up in life. Like, no. Right. So for me, it was just like you factor in the reality that you can make it without these fraternities and sororities, plus the hazing rituals that literally is a threat to your life, and the fact that you got to pay dues every year, thousands of dollars. It was just something to me where it was just like, why be a part of this? What is this really doing for me that I can't do for myself? Right. And also too, I was again becoming a Christian, and I realized, well, if I'm actually in a good church and I have a good church network, that's really what my community should be anyway. The church is a place where I can network as well. And so the fact of the matter is, these fraternities and sororities, for me as an institution, was seen as irrelevant. But for a lot of people, they work. But y'all got to clean house on this stuff. These hazing rituals that you continually allow, that you're not doing anything about, right? I've already seen comments from people, fraternities and sororities, members of these organizations saying, well, if you're not in the frat or the sorority, you shouldn't be able to comment on it. No, we're not going to let you cover this up like you always do. You guys go through this every once in a while, and then people move on, they forget about it, and people have to call you out on this, because young black men and young black women who pledge these historically black fraternities and sororities will continue to suffer immense trauma, probably even lose their life as a result of joining these fraternities and sororities. And I get the fact that pledging something and going through something creates bonds, and so it creates a deeper level of loyalty and respect for what you're a part of, because you actually had to work to get it. Fine. I'm not mad at that aspect of making people work for something, but you got to find something else that doesn't include violence, any sort of stress, trauma on people's emotions and brain, on their brain and their physical being. Right? You have to make sure that the people who you're pledging, make them work for it, yes, but find something that doesn't involve humiliation and abuse. Like, come on, this cannot work. And universities and these fraternities and sororities, you have your little policies that you stow up on your website, and you're doing absolutely nothing to enforce it. You know what's going on with these fraternities and sororities. And then when something happens, that's when you guys step out and go, okay, well, you know what? We need to ban so-and-so fraternity for 2 to 3 years, but they're going to come back anyway. And when they come back, they'll be doing the exact same thing. Because these fraternities and sororities don't really care about these pledgees that are trying to get into their organization. They don't. Part of the reason why they're even doing all of this is because they want to weed out the people that they think are weak. And it becomes some sort of, evolutionary, like the strongest survive type mentality. And those are the people that get to pledge. And the rest of the people, if they die, they die. That kind of mentality is what these people have. They don't really care about the people who are pledging. Right. And so if part of the reason why they make it so difficult to pledge is because they want you to quit. They want you to feel humiliated and say, I can't do this. And I'm not. That's how they weed out the people who they think are weak. And so this can't happen. And you people who are in these fraternities and sororities, I'm not trying to say you guys are bad people or evil people, but you've been turning a blind eye for this. And the tradition, it's almost like, when you hear parents talk about, well, you know what, look, I went through a lot when I was growing up. I was getting beatings. So I'm going to make sure when my kid is growing up, he going to get beatings too. It's almost like, well, if I had to go through it, you had to go through it. And a lot of these members of fraternities and sororities, they think to themselves, well, since I had to go through it, why should we make it easier for somebody else to go through it? Right. And so the tradition continues because that's how they think. This is the way we've been doing it. And so this is the way it's going to continue. But you're going to continue to see people die and instances like this happen. And I honestly feel like for a lot of these fraternities and sororities, they would rather uphold their tradition. And if a couple people die along the way, for them, it's more important for them to uphold their tradition. And I think that's horrible. And I think that's terrible. And I think that individuals in these fraternities and sororities need to be held accountable to actually deal with this stuff. Don't just throw up, well, we have anti-hazing policies, blah, blah, blah. We have anti-abuse policy. Actually do something about it. Like actually clean house, actually find new ways to make people interested who are pledging in your organization work for it. Because I agree, there should be something that unifies the line, right? Something that makes it challenging and something that makes it so that you have to work to get in. Cool. But it can't, there's got to be another way for you to do that that doesn't involve abuse. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't involve any type of threat to someone's health, mental, emotional, physical. There's got to be a way. Figure it out. Okay. If you want people, your pledgees to write, 100,000 word essays, I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out. Figure it out. Make them work for it, but make them actually not be under threat to die, because this is what's going to keep happening. And it's only going to look worse, because here's the thing. Society is becoming more and more averse to any form of abuse. And when things like this happen and you're constantly being exposed for the abuse that's going on, you're going to gain a reputation that is far worse than what you intend. Because I don't really hear too much about fraternities and sororities when it comes to all the good that they're doing. But whenever these incidents happen where someone loses their life or something like that, it goes viral. Your reputation as a fraternity and sorority is on the line. And if you don't clean house, this is what's going to continue to happen. So, prayers up for this young man, prayers up to his family. I hope that this incident just doesn't hurt people in the moment. And then, we have a tendency as a society that when we get hurt or we feel sorry for someone in a moment, 2 weeks later, we move on. I think that's exactly what these fraternities and these sororities would like. Couple of condolences and people move on and nothing changes. I hope that this incident actually sparks real change in these fraternities and sororities, and that there can be some healing for everyone who's been impacted by this. But anyway, man, this has been Providence. Thank you guys for listening. I'll see you guys in the next video.